Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today we are going to talk about the language and the brain. Language and the brain refers to how language abilities are situated in the brain, specifically in the left hemisphere of the brain. According to U 2020, stated that there are certain parts of the brain in the left hemisphere that are responsible for its function, such as the Broca's areas, which is involved in the generation of spoken language, and Wernicke's area, which is involved in the understanding of spoken language. Besides that, the motor cortex of the and the arcuate fasciculus are also crucial, as one helps with the physical articulation of speech and the other is a bundle of nerves that connects the Wernicke's and Broca's areas. Simply put, it is due to this part of the brain that we are able to speak and understand language, and damage to them will cause difficulty in language learning. Have you ever wondered what happened if someone didn't get exposed to the language? They will be considered as a feral child. So, what is feral child? Feral child is, from yourdictionary.com, feral child means a child who is raised without human contact as a result of being abandoned, allegedly often raised by wild animals. Most of the feral child have problems with their behavior and their skills in learning language. One of the reasons of this is because they got no contact with the human that supposedly make them familiar with language. Human needs to be exposed to the language in order to learn it. Human brain has their own period to get language acquisition, which is known as critical period, or else they will have trouble in communicating, including generating and understand language. If they are not being exposed about language before their critical period end, which started after they were born until puberty, they will have a hard time to learn language, or even worse, they will not even be able to learn it. So, one of the examples of the feral child is Ozana Malaya. She's been neglected by her alcoholic parents. When she was 3 years old, she found protection from a dog. Until she was 9, she was rescued. Luckily, her critical period did not end yet, and she's still capable of learning language and helped the rescuer to know the whole story of why she was living with the dog instead of her parents. So, from the story, it is proof that language can still be learned if the children did not pass their critical period on learning language. It also shows that children need to have exposure to language in order to learn it. At the same time, this type of cases prove that language is not something natural like genes or self-teaching. Feral children cannot learn language after critical period because abnormal sensory experience have less drastic effect on the brain and leads to very direct damage to the central nervous system.
I am Adawia. Now, let's move on and talk about something relatable. At some point in life, we all must have made a speech error while talking to someone, whether in real life or online. Most of the time, this mistake is considered funny. For example, we might produce the word fire distinguisher instead of fire extinguisher. And this common phenomenon is called the tip of the tongue or TOT phenomenon. According to Encyclopedia, the tip of the tongue or TOT phenomenon refers to the experience of feeling confident that one knows an answer yet is unable to produce the word. Another term is called malapropism. According to Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, malapropism is the usually unintentionally humorous misuse of distortion of a word or phrase. When talking about language, it is normally related to the left hemisphere of the brain, and it is closely linked to the left ear. There are 4 parts in the left hemisphere of the brain that is important when talking about the connection of the brain and language, which are the Broca's area, the Wernicke's area, the arcuate fasciculus, and the motor cortex. When tip of the tongue or malapropism occurs, it is simply a glitch that happens in the brain of the language user. The TOT phenomenon was suggested to appear in uncommon words due to the brain's word storage system. Next, let's take a look at one real-world example.
Kongsi juga bersama rakan-rakan anda di mana juga anda berada. Hari ini kita nak bercakap berkenaan dengan kembali ke kampus. Dan kepada anda yang bersemangat nak kembali ke kampus, bermula 1 Mac ini ada...
In his Instagram post, Syahrul Islam Basmullah, a Malaysian news announcer, uploads a clip of his news segment where he made an error while delivering the news. His news segment was about the dates of students going back to campus on March. Instead of producing the word campus, he uttered a baby diapers brand, which is Pampers. This is the best example for the tip of the tongue that can happen in real life. The word campus and Pampers definitely have a very similar phonological structure. Maybe the word Pampers is more familiar to him than the word campus. As the news announcer speaks rapidly, the possibility of the brain to make an error is inevitable, thus resulting in a hilarious mistake. That's it for my explanation on the tip of the tongue phenomenon. I'll pass the next part to Farha.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Farha and I will be talking about the next concept of language and the brain, which is broadcast aphasia. According to National Aphasia Association 2018, stated that broadcast aphasia, also known as expressive aphasia or non-fluent aphasia, is a language disorder characterized by slow, laborious, and limited amount of speech, distorted articulation, and difficulty in constructing proper grammatical sentences. For instance, an individual with this type of aphasia will usually say, "I steak and fries for dinner," rather than "I had steak and fries for dinner." In this type of aphasia, comprehension is usually better than production. Simply put, people with broadcast aphasia have trouble speaking fluently because they struggle to come up with the right words to say or the right sounds to make. So, you might ask, what is the relationship between broadcast aphasia and language and the brain? So, Yule 2020 has defined aphasia as an impairment of language function due to localized brain damage and mentioned that the most common cause of it is stroke, which is when a blood vessel in the brain bursts or is blocked. Broadcast aphasia is named based on which part of the brain the damage happens to, which in this type of aphasia is the broadcast area. When this specific part of the brain in the left hemisphere is damaged, whether it be because of stroke or head injury, it results in difficulty in generating spoken language. This indicates that broadcast area is indeed responsible for a language function, specifically producing spoken language, and language abilities are indeed located in the brain, specifically in the left hemisphere. So here's a real-world example of this concept so we can understand it further. Sarah Scott, now Sarah Dickens, is a 31-year-old woman who had an unexpected ischemic stroke when she was 18 in May 2009. Sarah was diagnosed with broadcast aphasia following her stroke. She has a YouTube channel where she updates videos or interviews of her during her recovery process. In the first ever interview of her after the stroke, Sarah talked about how the stroke happened.
School and English class.
Okay.
And I book.
Speech was slow and effortful with lots of stutters, hesitations, and pauses in between. Besides that, her speech was agrammatic or lacking grammatical forms. For instance, she said, "At school, English class," when what she meant was, "It happened at school when I was in my English class." Furthermore, Sarah couldn't answer the interviewer when she was asked how old she was because she couldn't come up with the number of her age. Other than that, Sarah's pronunciation of the word aphasia was distorted, even more so because it was her first time saying it. Moreover, when the interviewer asked her, "So, you were going to the university, what are you doing now?" and she couldn't answer the question, but when the interviewer reiterated the question as, "What do you do now?" Sarah could answer the question. This shows that she can comprehend simple sentences relatively well, but has a harder time in understanding complex sentences, which is also a symptom of broadcast aphasia, according to the National Aphasia Association 2018. By that, it concludes my explanation. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm going to talk about the learning aphasia. Learning aphasia is a condition that causes impaired language comprehensions. Most of the time, patients with learning aphasia are very fluent and have a normal rate of speech and good intonation while talking to others. However, the content of speech is difficult to understand because they are struggling to find the correct words. This condition is called anomia and usually will lead to misunderstanding between the patients and others because people cannot understand them very well due to the choice of words. For example, the patients might say telescope instead of glasses or glasses instead of glasses. Patients with learning aphasia typically are not aware they are not making sense, and this will make them frustrated because they are misunderstood. They also usually will try to describe object or talk about its purposes as a strategy to overcome their difficulty in finding correct words. Aphasia refers to trouble with speaking, understanding speech, or writing or reading as a result of the damaged part of the brain as mentioned earlier. Wernicke aphasia is named based on its damaged area, which is Wernicke's area that is crucially involved in understanding of spoken language. The common causes of Wernicke aphasia is ischemic stroke that occurs when the blood supply to the part of the brain is interrupted or reduced, which prevents brain tissue from getting oxygen. Based on the National Library of Medicine website, every year approximately 17,000 new cases of aphasia are related to stroke. This shows that language and the brain are closely related to each other. So I'm going to share a case I found in the Aphasia Center website. Phil, a 65 years old man, started suffering with aphasia 8 months after he had a stroke. He didn't know why people around him couldn't understand him. His wife was told that her husband was dangerous and the police sent him to a psychiatry center. His wife was very frustrated because she couldn't communicate with her husband. Phil was diagnosed with severe Wernicke aphasia, and with his fluent aphasia, he spoke very well, but only 2% of what he said made any sense. For example, he can't order pizza for his wife like he used to do, and he can't send email to his grandchildren as usual. Besides that, he also couldn't understand much of what was being said to him. He was put under treatment for 6 weeks, and this couple was counseled about how to interact with each other productively. As a result, both of them successfully learned different ways to communicate and help each other to understand the other better. Within 1 week, Phil could say over 15 relevant words per session, and it keeps increasing by the end of his treatment. He also was thrilled as he could order pizza for him and his wife again. Having severe Wernicke aphasia can be tough, but it is possible to be cured through intensive aphasia therapy.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So in this part, I'm going to be explaining about conduction aphasia. So according to Yule 2020, conduction aphasia is a brain disorder that happens in arcuate fasciculus, whereby the patient would have difficulties in repeating the word, and that will lead to mispronouncing it. This is because arcuate fasciculus functions as a bridge to connect Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Fortunately, the patients that suffered from this disorder do not have articulation problems, but they are talking with pauses and hesitations as they cannot repeat words clearly. The patients will be aware of their condition and try to correct their mistakes by repeating it over again. Conduction aphasia relates with the theme, which is language and the brain, because apparently aphasia happens in specific parts of the brain and the aftermath would involve speech difficulties. In this case, arcuate fasciculus function is to transfer the signal that Wernicke's area received to Broca's area. If an individual is diagnosed with conduction aphasia, they would certainly struggle with speech producing because the words that have been heard and comprehended by Wernicke's area cannot be sent fully to Broca's area. To make it more clearer, there's a video of an old man who's trying his best to recover from aphasia by speech-language therapy. The therapy is divided into 3 exercises. So the first exercise, which the instructor told the man to repeat the words like on tour and hotel. The instructor also used no more than 2-syllable words. For the word on tour, the man started off perfectly, but when he tried to pronounce tour, we can see he struggled a bit to say the word. Next, the word hotel. The man pronounced sound k instead of t at the last syllable, so he pronounced it as hotel. Next phase, the instructor started to put the words in a sentence. The real sentence is rented a car, but the man cannot say the last word, which is car. Instead, he said whole keller, Callan and car. Second exercise, the man was told to pronounce more words. This time it was airline and hotel. The man had no problem for the word airline, but then when he tried to pronounce hotel, again he said holai. In this part, we can see that the man was confused or stuck with the previous word, which is airline. His pronunciation of hotel was like a combination of airline and hotel, which is holai. Third exercise, the instructor asked some questions to the man and he has to answer whether yes or no. In this exercise, the instructor was trying to see if the man was able to recognize the words he spoke before by putting the words in the questions. The instructor started to ask him on why he loves to rent a car when he travels. In this scene, we can see the man was fluent when he explained his answer, even though some words that came out of his mouth were hardly understandable because of pauses and hesitations. We can also see he has a symptom of anomia, which is difficulty in finding the word. He wanted to say the hotel's parking, instead he said the parking in low hotel.